My sister exposed me, ripping the crutch from my grasp, and retorted, "Stop faking. You're just a leech on us." My family laughed as I dropped. None knew my surgeon was behind them. He stepped close, placed a hand on her shoulder, saying 6 words that ended her life. Her smug smirk completely crumbled. There are moments in life that shatter everything you thought you knew. But what if the person who delivers that final, devastating blow isn't a stranger, but your own sister? What if, at your absolute lowest, most vulnerable point, she doesn't just betray you, but publicly humiliates you, ensuring you fall all over again, right in front of your entire family? That's my story. And what she didn't know was that someone else was watching. It was a Tuesday morning in March, just a regular commute to work. One second, I was humming along to the radio. The next, a pickup truck blew through a red light and slammed into my driver's side. The impact was violent, a twisted metal dance across the intersection, then darkness. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed, my body a symphony of agonizing pain. A shattered femur, 2 broken ribs, and a concussion that left me swimming in a dizzy haze for weeks. My orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Marcus Thorne, was this calm, reassuring man in his late 40s, salt and pepper hair, and hands so steady you'd trust him with your life. And trust him I did. He spent 6 grueling hours inside my leg, inserting a titanium rod and what felt like 100 pins to piece my bone back together. Recovery? Months, he said. Extensive physical therapy, he warned. The pain. Oh, the pain. Even with the medication, it was a searing agony that pulsed through my leg with every tiny shift. It was a hell I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Now, let me tell you about my sister, Serena. She was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She married Brendan Miller, a corporate lawyer who basically printed money, and they lived this picture-perfect life in a sprawling suburban house with their adorable twin daughters, Chloe and Sophia. Serena loved to remind everyone how successful she was. Every family gathering became her personal stage, a showcase for her flawless existence. Me? I was a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm. Decent job, sure, but nowhere near Brendan's salary. I lived in a modest downtown apartment, drove a used Honda that had seen better days. My parents, they always seemed a little disappointed in me. Comments about my career choices, subtle hints about settling down with someone respectable. You know the drill. It felt like I was constantly measured against Serena's perfect life and always came up short. Then the accident happened and everything shattered. Not just my leg, but my entire life. I couldn't work, couldn't drive, could barely hobble to the bathroom without help. Insurance covered most medical bills, thankfully, but the copays and deductibles were draining my savings faster than I could blink. My job put me on short-term disability, leaving me on 60% of an already modest income. I was drowning. Serena, my golden sister, offered her guest room. My stomach churned. The thought of being dependent on her, of having to live under her perfect roof, was unbearable. But my apartment was on the 3rd floor, no elevator, and Dr. Thorne explicitly forbade stairs on crutches. So I swallowed my pride, a huge bitter pill, and accepted. The first week, it was tolerable. She set me up in their 1st floor guest room, brought meals, even helped me shower. Brendan was polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with a house guest who needed constant care. The twins, bless their hearts, were sweet, drawing me pictures and fetching things. But by the 2nd week, the cracks started to show. Serena began sighing loudly when she had to help me. She'd make pointed comments about how long my recovery was taking, as if my shattered leg was just an inconvenience she'd graciously decided to tolerate. Brendan started working later, avoiding the house until after dinner. One night, I overheard them arguing, her voice sharp, about how much longer I'd be staying. Month 2, and things turned ugly. The meals stopped coming regularly. She'd forget my prescriptions. When I asked for help, she'd snap, "I'm not your personal nurse. You need to start doing more for yourself." Dr. Thorne had been crystal clear, no weight on that leg yet. Serena just dismissed it as overly cautious. My parents visited once during those 2 months. They spent most of the time gushing over Serena for being such a devoted sister. Then Dad dropped a bomb. You should have been more careful on the road, implying the accident was somehow my fault. My own fault. Mom just fussed over the twins and showed off Serena's latest vacation photos to anyone who'd listen. The isolation was crushing. My work friends texted less. They had lives, careers, weekend plans that didn't involve visiting an invalid. I understood, but it still hurt. Some evenings, I'd scroll social media, watching everyone else's lives move forward while mine was frozen in time. By month 3, physical therapy started. 3 times a week, Brendan would drive me to the clinic. Ava, my therapist, pushed me through exercises that left me sweating and fighting back tears. Progress was agonizingly slow. Some days, I feared I'd never walk normally again. Dr. Thorne said I was healing well, but the timeline stretched endlessly ahead. The sessions with Ava were brutal. Leg lifts with resistance bands, searing fire through my thigh. Simple stretches leaving me gasping. Balance exercises that made me feel like a toddler learning to stand. I watched other patients, less injured, graduate from their programs while I still struggled. Brendan's resentment became palpable during those drives. He'd check his watch constantly, sighing if my session ran long. One day, he actually complained my appointments were interfering with his work, suggesting I find alternative transportation. When I reminded him I couldn't drive, he muttered about ride-sharing services and fell silent. My work sent flowers the first month, a cheerful arrangement. By month 3, communication dwindled to emails asking when I'd return. My disability payments covered rent and basics, but nothing else. I wore the same 3 outfits. The loneliness was a heavy cloak. Serena's patience had utterly evaporated. She started accusing me of milking it for sympathy. "It's so convenient you get to lounge around all day while I work and take care of my family," she'd sneer. I tried to explain Dr. Thorne's instructions, but she'd just roll her eyes. The breaking point came in early August, 5 months after the accident. Serena decided to throw a huge barbecue for Dad's 65th birthday. The whole extended family was invited. Mom, Dad, Aunt Michelle, Uncle David, cousins Jason and Jessica with their kids. It was a massive production, catered food, a rented bouncy castle. Mom, bless her heart, had insisted on inviting Dr. Thorne. She'd met him during one of my checkups and was so impressed. A gesture of gratitude, she called it. I was mortified at the thought of my surgeon seeing me in a social setting, but he'd accepted out of politeness, saying he'd stop by briefly. I offered to help prep, but Serena just waved me off, telling me to stay out of the way. So, I spent the morning in my room, listening to the laughter drifting in. Around noon, Serena knocked. "Everyone's asking for you," she said, a sharp edge in her voice. "You should come out and be social instead of hiding away like an invalid." Getting dressed was a monumental task. I managed a sundress, brushed my hair, grabbed my crutches, and slowly made my way out. The backyard was packed as I hobbled through the sliding glass door. Everyone turned to stare. Dad was at the grill, flipping burgers with theatrical flair. Mom and Michelle were sipping wine, giggling. Kids screamed in the bouncy castle. Adults clustered in small groups. Serena spotted me immediately. She was by the drink cooler with Brendan and Jason. Her expression darkened as I approached. I tried to smile, to greet them, but my voice came out weak. The pain in my leg was worse than usual. I'd overdone physical therapy the day before. "Look who finally decided to join us," Serena announced, loud enough for half the yard to hear. Several heads turned. "We're starting to think you'd forgotten what fresh air looks like." I forced a laugh, trying to play along. "Yeah, it feels good to be outside. Thanks for inviting everyone, Sarah. The yard looks amazing." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You know what would be even more amazing? If you could actually contribute something instead of just taking up space in my house." The conversation around us died. Jessica stopped mid-sentence. Even the kids quieted. My face flushed hot with embarrassment. "I'm doing everything I can," I said quietly. "Dr. Thorne says I'm making good progress." Serena scoffed. "Dr. Thorne, you throw that name around like he's some kind of wizard. Maybe if you actually pushed yourself instead of using him as an excuse, you'd be walking by now." Brendan shifted uncomfortably. "Serena, maybe we should know Brendan." I'm tired of tiptoeing around this. She's been living here for 5 months rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities, and for what? So she can hobble around on those crutches feeling sorry for herself. My hands clenched on my crutch grips. I offered to pay rent. You told me not to worry about it, because I thought you'd be gone in a few weeks, not half a year. Her voice rose with each word. You're not even trying to get better. You just want someone to take care of you because you can't handle being an adult. Mom stood from the patio table, a faint Serena. That's enough, escaping her lips. But Serena wasn't listening. She took another step toward me, her face flushed with anger. You know what I think? I think you're exaggerating how bad it is. I think you're milking this injury because it's easier than going back to your mediocre job in your tiny apartment. That's not true. My voice cracked. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I got hit by a truck, Serena. I almost died. Almost doesn't count. You're fine now. You just don't want to be. The other guests had formed a loose circle, watching the spectacle. Pity on some faces, discomfort on others. Jason was filming on his phone, a smirk on his face. Jessica covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with suppressed giggles. Uncle David even let out a surprised chuckle. Stop faking it, Serena said, her voice dropping to something cold and measured. You're just leeching off us because you have nowhere else to go and nothing better to do. Before I could respond, she reached out. She grabbed my left crutch. She yanked it hard, pulling it from under my arm. I stumbled, trying desperately to balance on one leg, but the sudden shift was too much. My right leg buckled. I fell forward, landing hard on my knees. Pain exploded through my injured femur. I cried out, a guttural sound I couldn't stop. The impact sent shock waves up my spine. The crutch clattered onto the concrete patio where Serena had thrown it. Someone gasped. Then, impossibly, I heard it. Laughter. Not from everyone, but enough. Jason was definitely laughing, his phone still trained on me. Jessica covered her mouth, but her shoulders were shaking with suppressed giggles. Uncle David even let out a surprised chuckle before catching himself. I tried to push myself up, but my arms were shaking. The pain was blinding, hot, humiliating tears streamed down my face. I was on all fours on my sister's patio, like an animal, while my family watched, and some of them laughed. Get up, Serena said flatly. You're making a scene. I can't. The words came out as a sob. You hurt me. I need my crutch. Oh, for God's sake. Serena turned to Brendan. See what I mean? This is what I've been dealing with. Pure manipulation. That's when I heard it. A voice I never expected. Deep, authoritative, absolutely furious. What the hell is going on here? Everyone turned. Dr. Marcus Thorne stood by the side gate, in casual clothes, a gift bag in his hand. His eyes swept the scene, me on the ground, the scattered crutch, the circle of gaping faces. His expression shifted from confusion to dawning understanding to raw, unfiltered rage in seconds. He walked directly to Serena, placed a hand on her shoulder. She jumped, spinning to face him. He leaned in slightly, his voice carrying across the now utterly silent yard. You just assaulted my patient. Those 6 words. They fell like stones into still water, and the ripples of their impact spread, chilling every single person in that yard. Jason's phone slowly lowered. Jessica's smile vanished. Uncle David took a step back, as if distance could erase his earlier laughter. Serena's face went ghastly pale. I didn't. She was just. I watched you rip that crutch away from her. Dr. Thorne's voice was perfectly controlled, which somehow made it even more terrifying. I watched her fall. I heard people laugh. And now I'm going to explain exactly what you've done. He released Serena's shoulder and moved to me, still struggling on the ground. He knelt, his hands gentle, practiced, as he assessed me. Can you tell me where it hurts? My leg, I managed through tears. The femur. It's bad. He nodded, jaw tight. I need to examine you properly. Don't move yet. He stood, addressing the crowd, his eyes landing on each person. Does anyone here have medical training? Anyone at all? Silence. Mom and Michelle exchanged worried glances. Dad stared at Dr. Thorne, completely bewildered. I'm Dr. Marcus Thorne, orthopedic surgeon at Mercy General Hospital. 5 months ago, this woman, my patient, was in a catastrophic car accident. Her right femur was shattered into 11 separate pieces. The bone fragments lacerated muscle tissue and came within millimeters of severing her femoral artery. If that had happened, she would have bled out before the ambulance arrived. He paused, letting the words hang heavy in the air. Serena had backed up against Brendan, her earlier bravado completely gone. I spent 6 hours in surgery reconstructing her leg, he continued, his voice growing harder. A titanium rod, 8 pins, 4 plates. The procedure was complicated by significant bone loss. For the first 2 weeks, we weren't even sure we'd be able to save the leg at all. Amputation was a real possibility. Mom made a small sound of distress. I never told them it was that serious. The doctors had discussed it with me privately, but I downplayed it to my family, not wanting them to worry, or, I realize now, not wanting to give them ammunition to claim I was being dramatic. Dr. Thorne crouched beside me again. Recovery for this type of injury typically takes 6 to 12 months. She's currently at month 5. Her progress has been excellent, better than expected, actually, considering the extent of the damage. But the bone is still healing. The hardware is still settling. Weight bearing is carefully controlled to prevent complications. I need to get you to the hospital for x-rays. That fall may have caused serious damage. But first, I want everyone here to understand something. He looked directly at Serena. When you pulled that crutch away, you didn't just cause her to fall. You potentially undid months of healing. You may have shifted the hardware. You could have refractured the bone. I didn't mean to. Serena started, tears forming in her own eyes. No? You told her to stop faking it. Dr. Thorne's interruption was sharp. You accused her of exaggerating. You implied she was lying about her injury, and then you physically removed her medical equipment and caused her to fall. That's not an accident. That's assault. Dad finally found his voice. Now wait just a minute. This is a family matter. Dr. Thorne stood to his full height, an imposing figure. This became a medical matter the moment she hit the ground. It became a legal matter when someone assaulted a patient under my care. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling an ambulance, and then I'm filing a report. You can't do that. Serena's voice rose to a near shriek. She's my sister. This is my house. Watch me. The next 20 minutes were a blur. Dr. Thorne called 911, explaining the situation with clinical precision. He made another call to a colleague, asking them to meet us at the hospital. He stayed by my side the entire time, monitoring my vitals, doing everything he could to keep me comfortable. Mom tried to approach, but Dr. Thorne warned her to keep her distance, pointing out she'd sat there and let it happen. Dad tried to defend Serena, claiming she didn't mean any harm. Dr. Thorne shut him down with a single, withering look. The ambulance arrived quickly. The EMTs, who clearly knew Dr. Thorne, were efficient. One of them, a kind woman named Denise, was incredibly gentle as they moved me. Every movement sent fresh agony through my leg, but Denise talked me through it, her voice a balm. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I heard Dr. Thorne speaking to Serena again. His voice was low, meant for her ears alone, but fragments carried. Lawyers, documentation, consequences. Serena's face had gone from pale to a ghastly gray. Dr. Thorne rode with me to the hospital, holding my hand during the transfer. His presence, his unwavering support, somehow made everything less terrifying. I was rushed to radiology. The x-rays felt like an eternity, each position sending waves of pain through me. When the images came back, Dr. Thorne's expression was grim. He showed me the screen, pointing out details I couldn't quite comprehend. See here? That's a hairline fracture in the cortical bone. It's new. And here, one of the pins has shifted slightly. My heart sank. It's not catastrophic, but it's serious. What does that mean? I whispered. It means you're looking at another surgery, a minor one, thankfully. I need to realign that pin and stabilize the fracture site. You'll be non-weight bearing again for at least 4 weeks, followed by another 8 to 12 weeks of careful physical therapy. Tears welled up again. 5 months of brutal progress, potentially erased, all because my sister decided I was faking. How long until I can walk normally? Honestly, he said, his voice softening, add another 3 to 4 months to your original timeline. You're looking at Christmas, maybe New Year's, before you're back to baseline. He sat beside my hospital bed. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. It's not your fault, I managed. No, he agreed, his eyes firm. It's not. And that's important to remember. This setback is the direct result of someone else's actions. Actions that were frankly inexcusable. Over the next few days, the full scope of what happened began to unfold. Dr. Thorne had indeed filed a police report. 2 officers came to take my statement while I was still in the hospital recovering from the second surgery. They were professional, thorough, asking detailed questions about the incident and my living situation. The surgery went well. Dr. Thorne realigned the pin and stabilized the fracture without major complications, but the recovery had to start all over. Back to square one. Weight-bearing restrictions, pain management. The hospital social worker, a kind woman named Sarah, helped me figure out my next steps. Going back to Serena's house was obviously impossible, but my apartment was still inaccessible, and my savings were gone. Sarah connected me with a temporary housing program for people recovering from major injuries. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean, accessible, and on the ground floor. A godsend. Jason's video predictably went viral. Not in the way he'd hoped. Someone posted it to Reddit with the title, "Family Laughs as Disabled Woman Falls." The internet detectives did their thing, identifying Serena and Brendan within 48 hours. Their social media accounts were flooded with comments. Brendan's law firm was bombarded with calls. Someone even started a GoFundMe for my medical expenses without my knowledge or permission. It was surreal. Mom called 3 days later, sobbing, apologizing. She finally understood, she said, how serious my injury was. She'd been so focused on supporting Serena. She hadn't stopped to consider what I was actually going through. Dad sent a stiff text, "Hope you're feeling better." Serena? She never contacted me. The district attorney's office got involved. The video evidence, Dr. Thorne's testimony, the medical documentation, it was a straightforward case. Serena was charged with assault and battery. Brendan hired an expensive defense attorney who tried to argue it was a family disagreement blown out of proportion. The legal process dragged on for months. Depositions, evidence, countless meetings with prosecutors. I had to relive that day, describing the fall, the pain, the laughter, over and over. Each retelling opened the wound fresh. The defense attorney was aggressive, trying to paint me as difficult, as someone who'd overstayed her welcome, implying I'd taken advantage of Serena's generosity. My own attorney, a sharp woman named Eleanor Vance, shut down those lines of questioning efficiently. She prepared me well, coaching me to stick to the facts. Eleanor took my case pro bono after seeing the video. I have a sister myself, she told me, and I couldn't imagine treating her that way. The preliminary hearings were attended by several family members. Michelle came to support me, sitting in the gallery with a grim expression. Mom and Dad showed up, but sat on Serena's side, their loyalties still divided despite everything. Seeing them there, watching them choose Serena even after what she'd done, hurt more than the actual fall. The media picked up the story thanks to Jason's viral video. Local news stations ran segments about family conflict and elder abuse. Though I wasn't elderly, some reporter got my name wrong and started calling, leaving voicemails. I ignored them all. Eleanor advised me to stay silent publicly, to let the legal system work, but the attention was suffocating. Neighbors I never met recognized me. The grocery store cashier gave me pitying looks. Dr. Thorne provided expert testimony, bringing the x-rays, the surgical reports, everything. The defense attorney tried to suggest I was partially responsible for being unstable on my crutches. Dr. Thorne demolished that argument with a precision born from years of medical training. The case never went to trial. Serena's attorney convinced her to accept a plea deal, a year of probation, community service, and restitution for my additional medical expenses. The amount was substantial. Brendan was furious about the financial impact. I heard through Mom that their marriage was in serious trouble. The family fractured. Michelle and Uncle David stopped speaking to my parents, disgusted by their stance. Jason's wife divorced him, citing the video and his cavalier attitude. Jessica issued a public apology on social media, but it felt more about her image than genuine remorse. Mom and Dad tried to rebuild a relationship with me. It was slow, awkward. They'd spent so many years putting Serena on a pedestal that adjusting to reality was incredibly difficult for them. Mom started visiting me at the temporary housing once a week, bringing groceries, helping with tasks. Dad remained distant, unable or unwilling to confront his role. My employer had been understanding about the extended leave, but there were limits. After the second surgery, I had to accept that returning to my old position wasn't feasible. I shifted to freelance graphic design, working from home. It paid less initially, but the flexibility was essential. Physical therapy started again from scratch with a new therapist, Marcus. He was tougher than Ava, pushing me harder, but always within boundaries. Dr. Thorne said progress was measured in millimeters. Some days I wanted to quit. Marcus wouldn't let me. The temporary housing facility became my world for months. It was a converted apartment complex for people recovering from major injuries. My neighbors included a stroke survivor, a man who'd lost his leg, and an elderly couple who both needed hip replacements. We formed an unlikely support group, sharing meals, encouraging each other. Nobody questioned why I needed extra time to walk to the mailbox. Nobody suggested I was exaggerating when the pain was visible on my face. Diane, the stroke survivor, became a true friend. She'd bring me soup on hard days, and I'd help her with crossword puzzles. That GoFundMe started by strangers? It raised over $30,000. I cried when I saw the total, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who owed me nothing. The comments were full of support, stories from others betrayed by family, and furious condemnations of Serena. Some were fueled by outrage, but many seemed genuinely moved. That money became a lifeline. It covered medical expenses insurance denied, paid for modifications to my temporary apartment, and gave me a financial cushion while my freelance income grew. I even hired a part-time assistant, Liam, a college student who grocery shopped, cleaned, and ran errands, treating me with casual kindness, never making me feel like a burden. Dr. Thorne checked on me regularly, more than strictly necessary. We developed an unlikely friendship. He'd stop by during his rounds if I was in for a checkup, offering encouragement. He admitted my case had affected him more than most. Seeing a patient attacked for a legitimate injury had struck a nerve. Months passed. Fall arrived, then winter. I graduated from crutches to a cane, then to walking independently, though with a slight limp that Dr. Thorne said might be permanent. My leg ached when the weather changed, a constant souvenir of the trauma. Christmas came. Mom invited me for dinner. Serena wasn't there. Apparently, she and Brendan had separated. He moved out in November, taking the twins. Their divorce was messy. Serena had lost her job after the video went viral. Her employer decided she was a liability. Her perfect life had crumbled. I didn't feel triumphant about it. Mostly, I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that my own sister valued her pride more than my well-being. Sad that our family would never be what it once was, however flawed that had been. In January, almost a year after the accident, I had my final appointment with Dr. Thorne. He examined my leg carefully, reviewed my range of motion, and declared me officially healed. The hardware would stay in permanently, but I was cleared for normal activities. "How does it feel?" he asked as I walked back and forth across his office. Strange, I admitted. I almost can't remember what normal felt like before all this. He nodded thoughtfully. Trauma changes us. Physical trauma, emotional trauma. You're not the same person who got hit by that truck. Is that a bad thing? Depends. Are you stronger now, weaker? Different doesn't have to mean worse. I considered his question. I'd lost my savings, my apartment, my relationship with most of my family. But I'd gained independence, resilience, and a clearer sense of who really mattered. I think I'm different in ways I'm still figuring out. That's honest. I appreciate that. He closed my file. You're officially discharged from my care, but if you ever need anything, if that leg gives you trouble, you call me directly. Understood. Understood. Thank you, Dr. Thorne, for everything. Not just the medical stuff, but standing up for me when no one else did. He smiled, the first genuinely warm expression I'd seen from him. Someone had to. I'm glad I happened to be there. As I left his office that day, walking on my own two legs without assistance, I thought about Serena, about the moment she grabbed that crutch and sealed both our fates. She had wanted to expose me as a faker, to prove I was exaggerating for sympathy. Instead, she'd exposed herself. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd accused me of leeching, of taking advantage, of being weak. But in the end, her cruelty had revealed who was truly fragile. Her perfect facade had shattered as completely as my femur had. I moved into a new apartment in February, ground floor accessible. My freelance business was growing steadily. I picked up several regular clients and was making almost as much as I had at my old job. The flexibility suited me perfectly. Mom and I had developed a cautious new relationship built on honesty rather than the old patterns of favoritism. She'd even started therapy. Dad remained distant. Serena sent me a letter in March. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. She wrote about losing everything, her marriage, her job, her reputation. She claimed to understand what she'd done, though I wasn't sure I believed her. She asked if we could talk, maybe rebuild. I hadn't responded yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. The video eventually faded from viral status, replaced by the next scandal, but it lived forever in the dark corners of the internet. A permanent record of the moment my family's dysfunction was exposed to the world. Sometimes I wondered if Chloe and Sophia would see it someday, what they'd think of their mother. Dr. Thorne called me in April to check in. We'd maintained occasional contact, friendly but professional. He asked how I was doing, if the leg was holding up. I told him about my new apartment, my growing business. He seemed genuinely pleased. He said, I've been practicing medicine for 23 years. I've seen a lot of terrible things happen to good people, but I've rarely seen someone handle adversity with as much grace as you did. I didn't feel very graceful, I confessed. I cried a lot. Grace isn't about not crying. It's about getting back up. And you did that, literally and figuratively. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, looking out at the street below. Spring was arriving, trees budding with new growth. I thought about getting back up, about what that really meant. It wasn't just about walking again. It was about choosing to move forward when every instinct screamed to give up. Serena had tried to break me that day. She wanted to prove I was weak, to justify her resentment. What she actually did was show me exactly how strong I'd become. 5 months of pain, of depending on someone who resented every moment, of being dismissed and doubted and diminished, and I'd survived it. I kept going to physical therapy. I'd followed Dr. Thorne's instructions. I'd done the work even when it hurt. The fall had been humiliating. The laughter devastating. But that moment when Dr. Thorne stepped forward, when he spoke those 6 words, everything changed. Not just for me, but for everyone there. In an instant, the narrative flipped. I wasn't a leech, the faker, the burden. I was a victim of assault. And Serena wasn't the martyr, the long-suffering sister, the gracious host. She was an attacker. Truth has a way of asserting itself. Given the opportunity, Dr. Thorne had provided that opportunity. His presence, his authority, his willingness to speak up, had given my truth the voice it needed. Without him, it would have been my word against Serena's, and the family had already shown whose side they'd choose. I still limped when I was tired. The scar from the surgical incisions was a thick line down my thigh, impossible to hide. I'd probably always have some level of chronic pain, but I was walking. I was working. I was building a life that didn't depend on anyone's approval or support. In June, I saw Serena at a grocery store. We locked eyes across the produce section. She looked older, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with age. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. After a moment, she turned and walked away. I didn't follow her. I didn't call out. I selected my apples and continued shopping. Some wounds heal. Others leave scars that never quite fade. The trick is learning to live with both. To carry the weight of what happened without letting it crush you. The story could have ended so differently if Dr. Thorne hadn't shown up. If Jason hadn't filmed, if the video hadn't gone viral. So many small pivots that could have left me isolated, doubted, still dependent on a sister who despised me. But that's not what happened. The truth came out in the most public, undeniable way possible. And while the cost was high, a fractured family, a reset recovery, months of additional pain, there was something freeing about it, too. No more pretending. No more making myself small to accommodate other people's narratives. I learned who I could count on. Dr. Thorne, Marcus the physical therapist, Sarah the social worker, Denise the EMT, a network of professionals who showed up when my family failed. And in their professionalism, I found more genuine care than in years of obligatory family gatherings. The accident took my mobility temporarily and my innocence permanently. I'd always believed family meant unconditional support, that blood ties guaranteed loyalty. Serena taught me otherwise. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. And sometimes strangers show more compassion than those who've known you your whole life. As summer arrived, marking a full year since that barbecue, I realized I'd stopped waiting for an apology from Serena. I'd stopped hoping for my old life back. I'd stopped measuring my worth by my family's approval. I was simply living, moving forward one day at a time, building something new from the rubble. The titanium rod in my femur is permanent. So are the pins and plates. I carry Dr. Thorne's work inside me every day. A reminder that sometimes the right person shows up at exactly the right moment. That 6 words can change everything. That standing up for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it fractures families and destroys reputations, is worth it. I never did respond to Serena's letter. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday she'll find the courage to offer a real apology, not just an acknowledgement. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear it. But for now, I'm focused on walking forward, one step at a time, grateful for the strength in my healed leg and the clarity in my opened eyes. My journey back from that patio, from that betrayal, was long and agonizing, but it taught me a profound lesson about strength, about family, and about the unexpected kindness of strangers. So tell me, after hearing my story, what would you have done in my place? And have you ever had someone you trusted betray you in such a public, devastating way? I really want to know what you think.